Hi, and welcome to the Animators. I'm Brian Curl. We've got Tim Ingersoll, and we've got a special guest today, a legend in animation, Aaron Blaise. He's also a wonderful artist, just a great guy all the way around. Aaron has worked on The Rescuers Down Under, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King, Pocahontas, Mulan. He had his own short that he just finished last year, Snow Bear. How many views have you got on that right now, Aaron?
We're pushing 6 million. I think it's up to almost 5.7. So it's slowly trickling up. We're doing all right.
And he's working on a new one. So welcome, Aaron Blaise, to SA Animators.
Thank you, guys. I am so happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Aaron, you have had quite a background in animation. How old were you when you started? I know that you were an artist first.
So it's funny. I grew up in South Florida, out down right on the edge of the Everglades. It was for a kid like me that loved nature, it was just an absolute dream to grow up there. And I grew up drawing animals. That was always in nature. That was always my fascination. And I always had stacks of National Geographic magazines stuffed under my bed, and I would read them. And I was fascinated by the illustrations. And I loved fine art animal artists. So when I went to Ringling College of Art and Design in 1986, I was 18. I wanted to be a nature painter. I wanted to paint wildlife, fine art, but I also wanted to be an illustrator for National Geographic. That was my big goal. And so I majored in illustration, knew nothing about animation. I never gave it a thought. And it was during that time at Ringling that I was freelancing. I was doing everything I could do to pay my tuition. I was doing patent drawings and pet portraits, and I was doing caricatures at bar mitzvahs. And so I found out that National Geographic was free. They only freelance their illustrations, and I wanted to be on staff. And so I started to kind of broaden my search for what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And there was two opportunities. I had Hallmark Cards from Kansas City. Hallmark Cards was coming in to interview. And for the very first time, Disney was going outside of animation schools, and they wanted to see if they could recruit from schools that had strong drawing foundation and see if they could bring them in an internship and teach them animation. And I thought that was kind of interesting. So I prepared a portfolio for both, for Hallmark Cards and for Disney, but Disney happened to be first. And I got in. I was 20 years old, and I'd never been west of the Mississippi, and I got in my little beat-up Honda, and I drove to Los Angeles. And lucky for me, I was teamed up with this guy I'd never heard of. I didn't know anything about animation, but I was teamed up with this guy named Glenn Keane. And he took me under his wing, and he taught me animation, and that's how I got started. And that was 38 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, and you were at Disney. Now, you were in California, and then you came down to Florida for the.
No, so I grew up in Florida. I went to California for the internship. It was only 6 weeks. That was the other thing too. So I went from an illustration major, went out to California. I did a 6-week internship. I learned how to do cleanup, and I learned the basics. I learned the bouncing ball and a flour sack and a walk cycle and all that. And out of that, they said, "Hey, you're hired." And they hired me for the studio that he's going to be opening in Florida, in Orlando, the following year. So I still had a year of school. I went back to school and didn't think about animation for a whole year after that. So I had 6 weeks of training, but went back to illustration, finished up my year. And then the studio in Orlando opened in April of 1989. So I actually left school a month early and started as a cleanup artist. And that's how I got started, and completely forgot everything I learned, and kind of was thrown in trial by fire, and fell on my face a few times, but I learned along the way.
Now, was that the fishbowl they called it?
Yeah, that was the fishbowl. Exactly. Yeah, it was cool. You had to be careful where to scratch and what to pick and everything, but it was a fun environment. It was really cool. We had 10,000 people a day come through.
Wow.
We all had to do our time on the window. So anybody that came in that was new had to do time on the window, and then we get moved to other places. Yeah.
And so,
I know Andreas. I'm pretty good friends with Andreas, and he always mentioned that. Like, you know,
Oh yeah.
it was bittersweet, I suppose. I don't think he liked the Florida weather that much, but he definitely.
Oh yeah, it's definitely you need. Someone described it the other day. I thought it was funny, especially in the summertime. You need gills. Yeah, for sure. It's funny if you look over here. That's my original desk from that studio.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I left, they closed the studio down in 2004, and when I left, I took the desk with me, and they let me they let me have it. So that was cool.
You've got a
Some
great
big bucks now.
Yeah. Yeah, I said you got a great video on a walkthrough on your desk. You've actually carved a silhouette of or a lion on it when you were working on Lion King, right?
I did, yeah. The day that I started on the Lion King, I carved a little lion into the desk. Yeah.
What a great memory to have to look at every day. I mean,
it is. Yeah, it's I use that. I've been using that particular desk. I jumped around from desk to desk when I first started at the studio in Orlando, but this particular desk I've had for 35 years. Yeah.
Oh.
Do you ever rough out ideas on paper, Aaron?
All the time.
Oh, you do?
All the time. And I do a lot of demos and live streams on paper.
Yeah.
So like if I do a live stream for TikTok or if we're doing live streaming for whatever, I like to go back to paper just to be nostalgic and show people the way we used to do it. And it's funny, to you and I and us, I mean, we think about paper animation like it was yesterday, at least I do. Mm-hmm. And forget that it's been 20 some odd years since we've really done that. And there's been a generation and a half that have gone by without really seeing paper animation. And so when we grew up, you watch Disney and you watch the 9 old men doing demos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, when I do the live streams on Anime on Paper, the number one question I get outside of what pencil are you using is, why are you flipping the paper? And it blows my mind. That really blows my mind. Yeah. So, it's cool to do that and to show a new generation how we used to do it. And they're all blown away. It's like, I can't imagine making a movie that way. And it's like, well, that's how we used to do it.
That's the way it was done. And and today everything is so digital, and digital's good. I mean, you do digital art all the time.
I do it all the time. I did Snow Bear digitally.
Yeah.
It's all hand drawn, but it's digital. And I'd be the first one to admit that it definitely was quicker doing it that way. It was more efficient. But I don't have a stack of drawings to flip through, which would be bad.
And you did everything on Snow Bear. You did the snowflakes, the backgrounds.
I did
everything.
Yeah. I did. Yeah, that's where the illustration background kind of helped me out, and my painting background and all that. So that helped me out with layout, and so I did everything on it. And I've always wanted to do my own film, and so I decided that's what I was going to do with this one. So I purposely picked a single character, and what I thought at the time was a simple environment, but it wasn't. But and I just dove in and just kept plowing ahead until it was done. So.
And you're working on a new project. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I've got so funny. I've got no shortage of projects. I've got a lot of different projects that I'm working on, and one of the things we want to do with our business is. And it's funny you mentioned the fishbowl, Tim, because that was the inspiration for what I'm doing now. What we did with Snow Bear, I knew that because I left Disney in 2010, Disney, like every major studio, they make their films in secret, and then they, it's a big release to the world, and they've already got an established audience that's there to watch. And I don't have that. And so when I started making Snow Bear and I realized, okay, I'm just making a little short. How the hell am I going to get somebody to, in the audience to watch this? And I thought, well, we've got a pretty healthy audience with our website. Why don't I take the secrecy out of it and invite our patrons to come in and watch me make it? And so I live streamed it twice a week, the making of the film. And they watched for 2.5 years as I made it. And it was like a 2.5-year film class. It's what they got out of it. And what I got out of it was a bunch of ambassadors that went out and talked about the film, and it got a lot of traction that way. So we like that idea. It worked really well. So we want to keep doing it. I think I want to take it even further just organize it a little bit more, but we're calling it the fishbowl. So it's a virtual fishbowl.
Nice.
But it's going to be a lot of different projects. It's not just animation. I've got, this is where, that's why I'm saying I'm not quite sure what I'm going on to. I put out that I'm doing Blue,
Right.
which is a new animated project that I've been working on for the last several months. And it's about a young boy that grows up. He spends his whole life with this blue whale. He lives along the California coast, and he befriends this blue whale. And it's the story of generational friendship and how that transfers from generation.
Yeah.
But I've also got a sequel to Snow Bear, or prequel actually. It's about our polar bear character, and he was a cub, but it's a feature.
Oh, that's neat.
And so
Yeah.
what I thought I wanted to do with that is do a graphic novel with that. And so I'm toying with the idea of doing one or the other. I'm not sure which one, but I've got 3 or 4 other shorts as well, and some other graphic novel ideas. There's another story that we've been developing. We're developing several, and this is something I've always done since I left Disney. Is you develop several projects and something takes hold rather than focusing on one.
Yeah.
And I got it. When I was in 1982, I was 14. My brother and my stepfather and I were lost at sea in the Gulf of Mexico for several days. And we made it back to shore on this little island down in the Everglades, way toward the southern tip of Florida, down where there's nothing down there. And I've always wanted to write a story about that. And I've got this other world that I've been developing called the World of Hidden Creatures. It's like my version of elves and spicy. I think of them more as Aboriginal creatures and more I'm kind of taking the two stories and blending them together. So that's another big name that we're excited about. So yeah, we got a lot of different projects that we're developing. And
That and your daily stuff that you're already doing, and you've got conventions and talks to go to, and yeah.
So
I don't feel so busy now that I.
Yeah, right. Well, that there, and I figure we'll talk about this anyway, so I'll just go ahead and jump on it. It's this advent of AI and automation, artistic automation, and that sort of thing. And it's interesting. I'm not against technology. I love technology. I mean, it's what the human race has spent its entire time on the planet, right, figuring out how to make things more efficient. That's what's driven us to start farming. I don't want to go out and try to find deer anymore. I can grow this crop, and that's much more efficient, right? And I can create a wagon, and that I don't have to drag stuff across the ground. So our entire life is about making stuff more efficient. But the one thing that's not meant to be efficient is art, I think.
Yeah.
And now you could get into this big debate about when we talk about films and the production of films and that sort of thing. Is it still art, or is it a product, or is it something of both? And there's definitely a debate to be had there. But the one thing I don't think we should give up is the humanity or the process. One of the things about, and I know I'm going on a tangent, but I just figured I'll get on talking. But the end result of art isn't when we're creating it. For me, even when I'm creating an animated film, the end result is the bonus. It's the journey to get there that I really, really enjoy. Like I was saying earlier. Yeah. I just want to make enough money so that I can sit here and do my drawings and listen to James Taylor. That includes animation. Yeah. I love that process. And so our big drive now is it's not so much anti-AI or anti-technology, but pro-craftsmanship and pro-handmade and pro-human-made and that sort of thing. Just so that doesn't get lost, because one of the other things, I'll post something on social media to promote our site, and I'll show that it was handmade or whatever. And there's always some Yahoo out there that says, well, AI could do that in 5 minutes. Well, they can, but you're missing the point. And so that's kind of our big mission right now, is to try to keep that aspect alive.
Speaking of that, Aaron, real quick, you said you've been filming and recording your process, which is, I think, that one of the most amazing things too. It's a journey. It's how you got there.
Right.
Are you going to tape maybe compress all those 2.5 years and make a documentary?
Yeah. So it's interesting, that because that was literally the entire drive behind making Snow Bears to begin with. It was Nick and I, my business partner, we were off somewhere, and we were talking about piece of project, and I was like, you know what, I'm really missing filmmaking. Since I'd left Vision, I hadn't really done a film, and why don't we make a course on how to create your own animated short? And I said, I have to make a short in order to do that. And from the process. And so that's what we did. And so, yeah, I've got 450 hours that we got of the process of making the film. So yeah, we're gonna compress all that down. We're gonna make a course out of it, but we're also talking about doing some documentaries as well. That's another I guess we got in the fire, which is, for the last, 15 years or so, I wanted to do a kind of Anthony Bourdain style travel series documentary, but instead of food, it's art. And so we actually just cut a pilot together. We went in November, we went to Churchill, Manitoba, where Polar Bears International brought us up there. And we went out in the tundra buggies and we tracked polar bears, and I drove through from wild polar bears, and we broadcast from the tundra. We did all kinds of crazy stuff. And but we recorded the whole thing, and we just shot a pilot for it. And it's cool. It's it's going out, it's exploring the world, it's finding it's celebrating that thing I was talking about. It's that human made, celebrating discovery, celebrating slowing down and just observing the world, and so that's what it's about, and so we're doing a lot of that too. So
yeah, we've talked.
Hopefully, we're doing it in conjunction with everything.
Sure. We've talked about AI a little bit. Tim and I, of course, you guys saw the transition from 2D to 3D, and you had people that weren't willing to embrace the 3D, and so when 2D kind of fizzled a little bit, a lot of people didn't have jobs. Yeah. And we tried to promote on here that anything new that comes about, you need to look at it as a tool to put in your tool belt, because AI is not going to go away, and it's going to get better.
Here to stay.
It's going to get better and better. And
the copyright issues are going to get solved.
Right.
There's a lot of things. Yeah, it's the things that everyone's complaining about now. They'll just trickle away, or they'll get solved. And so when you project yourself 2 or 3 years down the road, that's where you should be thinking, where am I going to be at then?
So if you use it as a tool, I think you still need that human hand in there.
Yeah, but and that's the thing. So there's a lot of people that, and I definitely think you could use it as a tool, especially if you're training it on your own art, right? Yeah. Me personally, I like finding those poses. I like to do but I'm sitting in my own studio creating my own films. I'm not sitting in a studio in Hollywood where they're giving me headlines and everything else. So, it's probably apples and oranges that we're talking about. But for me, I like doing that exploration, because as a result of that exploration, when it comes time to do the animation, which I also like to do, those poses are in my head, and I've already done that exploration, and it's linear in 3D. So, but for someone else that doesn't have that ability, I can definitely see the appeal.
Yeah. Well, you did an interview with Corridor Crew quite a while back when they did a AI animation short that was really impressive what they did.
Yeah, I thought it was impressive too, although I still stand by, I don't necessarily agree that it was AI. I think it was more of a filter. I guess they were using AI to create kind of the look, but it was really, AI wasn't creating any new animation or anything like that. It was them taking their live action and kind of putting it through a filter and having this animation come out the other side, which was super impressive. Yeah. And super cool. And
it gave a different look to everything. I had never seen it.
It really did.
Yeah. So if people get a chance to go watch that, it's a good interview with Aaron. Those guys are great over there. I like to watch them.
They're super great. Yeah, I've been over there a couple of times, and I really dig what they do.
Well, I got a few questions for you, Aaron. See if we can run through these and get your insights on things. Looking back, what artistic mistake taught you the most?
I don't see anything as a mistake as much as, there's a lot of risks that I've taken over the years. Starting with the risk of going to Disney. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I wanted to learn. And so to me, it's not being afraid to go to a door that's open because you don't know how to do it. You just do it and you learn along the way. And so
Right.
I think the mistake would be to deny something like that, to not take the risk. I remember the biggest question that came to me was I was really, Tom Schumacher, who was the head of our studio for years and years, him and Peter Schneider did a big, after we finished Mulan, they were kind of talking about the whole studio, what was going on at the studio. And I heard about this movie in development called Bears. And I thought, oh man, that sounds cool. I'd love to work on Bears. I just straight up, I was known as kind of the animal guy at the studio. And I thought maybe I could do some character design or art direction. And I was at the squeaky wheel. I would not stop constantly. Until Tom Schumacher finally came to me and he says, geez, Aaron, what is it that you love about it? And I've been going to Alaska and I pulled up this painting and I was like, look, I got these paintings from Alaska. I got all kinds of ideas of what this movie could look like. And then he said, well, no one's working on it right now. It was just kind of sitting on the shelf. And he said, have you ever considered directing? So that was a huge opportunity. And I'll tell you, every film that I'd worked on up to that point, which wasn't a ton of films, but up to that point, every film, the first director that had gone onto any film that I'd worked on eventually had been let go and had been replaced by another director. And I was like, well, shoot, I don't know if I can, I can stay right here as a supervising animator and be really happy, or I can take this really huge opportunity to create something like this. And so I took it, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I thought I knew how to direct a movie. The benefit that I had was that I had great bosses, Tom Schumacher, Pam Coates. They were people that knew I was going to fail. They knew I was going to fall down, but they knew I was going to learn, and they let me fail and dust myself off and keep going and didn't fight them, which many times I could have been fighting. And so, but it's those, taking those risks. So rather than looking back on any mistakes I made, I think it's making sure that you take the risk, because that's where you grow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. While you were directing, though, did you kind of miss the day-to-day animating? Because you were probably, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I didn't, I had on average like 12 to 14 meetings a day. Yeah. Now, when we started getting through the crunch, I would have like a 2-hour gap. I would go back and I'd grab a shot from somebody and I'd animate. So there's a piece out in the cone that I animate. But I really did miss that. But the thing that I gained out of it that I loved was having my fingers in it. And I love music as well. My father's music, and I grew up to music in the house. And so being able to work with Phil Collins and Pina, was like a dream. And so being in the studio every day with that is super cool.
Yeah. To get to work with people that, that you grow up listening to or seeing, I've gotten to do that. I produced an album with William Shatner, and I met Jeff Cook, who was the one of the three founders of the group Alabama. And Jeff and I became friends, and he ended up on my label, and he was my wife's idol, and so she got and then I found out Jeff was a Star Trek fan, so I put him and Shatner together on an album and produced it, and I thought,
great.
Who gets to do that kind of stuff? I mean,
that's the thing.
And then I get into animation, and I meet Tim, and I meet you, and I meet John, and I'm like, I'm just overly blessed. That's all there is. Because
I'm right there with you.
I get to do stuff that I love to do and meet great people that are down to earth and just, Now I will say, Bill has a few quirks of his own. He's a little stuck on himself, but he's a good guy. So. So here's a good question. Why do people emotionally connect with animals in stories so deeply?
I think there's an empathy. It strips away. I've always asked that question of myself as well, and people ask me that, and I think it's a lot of different reasons. I think people naturally, at least people that are empathetic, naturally connect with animals and nature and that sort of thing, and to see humanistic stories told through their eyes, there's a barrier that gets stripped away that makes it feel
Sure.
a little more acceptable, I guess.
Yeah.
When you see humans going through dramatic emotional roles, you can really put yourself in it. You can really see, and it can be traumatizing for kids in certain situations. But when Bambi's mom getting killed, Mufasa getting killed, these super heavy, horrible
Yeah.
themes that are happening in kids' film. Well, I say kids' films or family films.
Yes.
But for some reason, when you layer the animal part over the top of it, it works, and it's other than I think it's you can put yourself, you sympathize and empathize, I think, a little more easily, and at least I do. I've always felt that way. I've always felt like I've always explained why I draw animals so much. They're fellow earthlings. We're all part of the same. It's not humans and then animals. We're all earthlings together. And I see things that way, and I think kids see it that way as well. With very easier to feel that when you're watching an animal-driven story.
I know it's what it's like to animate emotion, because I do 3D animation. I'm working on 2D animation, but I know it's what it's like to do emotions on a human character. But what's the hardest part about animating an emotion on an animal?
Well, first of all, the notion that they're different, especially the way we do it, it's right like Disney style animation. The first mistake is thinking that they're different. They're not different. Okay, whether it's human or our characters in an animal world, they're just shaped a little differently, but they're really emoting in the same way. So that's the first difference. And then, even in nature, in reality, we share a lot of the same basic signals that animals share. I mean, there's universal emotional signals where it's, baring your teeth, anger, aggression, staring at somebody full on, that's a sign of aggression. I was actually going over this. I just got done teaching in Colorado last week. And I was teaching animal drawing, and we were talking about emotional states of animals. And one thing you can do when you go to the zoo, if you go to a gorilla display, and there's gorillas there, the big silverbacks, and then once again, looking at somebody straight on, that's a sign of aggression, and that's universal going into primates, going into other animals, and if you watch a silverback, if they're not upset, they won't look at you straight. They'll look at you, up the side of their eye, because they don't want to be aggressive. Things like that. It's, that open look up to eyes, cowering back. All of those are universal, basic expressions and signs of emotion that we all carry at it. So you've got that, and then because humans are so incredibly social, like how we evolved, we can so much subtlety and information just in facial expressions and sight, the slight toss of an eyebrow and throw. And so that's really the only thing, because I like to animate. My preference is not like Robin Hood, Disney's Robin Hood style market animal. I like doing, Snow Bear, Lion King, naturalistic with human, emotions attached. And so it's really, the bodies are that animal, and then you're just putting some human emotion, put some eyebrows in there, you push the face a little bit, and now you've got a pair.
Yeah.
Snow Bear made me cry. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
We keep joking. I want to get a T-shirt made that says "I'm in the business of making people cry."
Yeah, you did a great job, man. I tell you, that was so good. I mean, I worked with Andreas for 7 years on Mushka, he would send me literally stacks of paper. I would follow him up. I animated some scenes for sure, but I was basically his breakdown artist for many, many, many scenes. Most of the movie actually for 7 years, but I even cried during that. But I mean, and I had a role in making that. But your Snow Bear was just phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. Well, Snow Bear was a big metaphor for like the last 30 years of my life. I lost my wife to cancer in 2007, my first life. We were together for 20 years. And so, that whole time of him walking alone and finding the Snow Bear and the fragility of life. And, after he loses the Snow Bear, he's adrift. I was emotional adrift for a long time. And then I finally got my feet back under me, which is him finding shore again. And then I met my wife, Vedanta. She's actually the sister-in-law of my business partner. So I was in business with Nick first, and for a long time. And then I met his, I've been a widower for 12 years or so. And then I met Vedanta, his sister-in-law, and we fell in love, and we got married 3 years ago. And so that became kind of the big story of Snow Bear. Well, that's what it is.
That's awesome. So if Walt Disney walked into your studio today, what do you think would surprise him most about animation today?
Well, I think it's the AI. I think it's the production, not just AI. Get AI out of it. Just the way we make films now. One of the things that Walt was a pioneer of was technology. He embraced
Yes.
technology. Loved technology. That was the whole drive behind Epcot. Epcot was meant to be a thriving community that was
right.
As technology grew, it was going to grow itself. And, he was the first one to do a color feature. He was the first one to do stereo and film, all of that. And so for him to see, digital animation on a Cintiq like I'd done, on this big 32-inch, I think he'd be fascinated by it.
Yeah, probably so.
I think it was cool.
Probably so.
Yeah, I think he'd be fascinated for sure.
So 20 years from now, when people look back at your body of work at Disney Films, your wildlife art, Snow Bear, Blue, any other projects that you're going to make in the future, what would you hope that they say Aaron Blaise contributed to the world?
I hope it's honesty and emotion, not being afraid to put the emotions on my sleeve. I don't like, and it's not, I'm not a fan, or I don't gravitate toward irreverent stories and things like that. I mean, I think they're fun and that sort of thing, but I want to tell stories from the heart. It's just where my sweet spot is. I'm not a funny guy. I try to get comedy into my stuff, but I really have to work at it. But I really do like telling stories that have something to say, and I'm not to make myself. Anyway, I want something where someone's going to take something away from it and go, wow, that moved me in some way, or I learned something from that. But yeah, I just I want that honesty in there. I've got a lot of life that I've lived, and a lot of ups and downs and a lot of turmoil. And I'm trying, before I kick the bucket, I want to take those experiences and turn them into stories that people can enjoy and learn from and get going from.
And as you always say, go out and put some beauty back in the world.
Put some beauty back in the world. Yeah. I mean, Tim and I are products of all of us, and you included. We're products of, all the other artists that came before us. The whole inspiration behind Creature Art Teacher, my business, was I had lost, after I left Disney, after my wife died, I started with another company back here in Florida, the Digital Domain, and they went under. After 2 years, they were belly up. And so I was sitting there trying to figure out what my next venture was going to be. I was in my mid-40s, and I started thinking about Glenn Keane and everything, and Mark Henn and Andrea Stasia and all these guys that had sharing so much of what they had learned over the years from the people before them. And I thought, what, I can take what I've learned from those guys and I can pass it on through this business. Yeah. And so I'm hoping that we're just continuing on that tradition.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thought. The world needs to be a better place. Well, we appreciate you, Aaron, being here with us today on Ask the Animators. We make sure that I'm going to have creatureartteacher.com is the website. Make sure you go visit. Amazing tutorials, videos, behind the scenes stuff. If you are interested in art in any way, make sure that you go and become a Patreon, follow his website, follow what he's doing. He's always got something going. He's very open to questions.
All the time.
Aaron is somebody who wants to help anybody who has a creative heart, and we appreciate you being here with us today. We look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you for having me. I had a ball, and then anytime I get a chance to talk about animation, I'm happy. So thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And as we always say,
Happy animating.
That was kind of weak, Jim. Happy animating.
Happy animating. Let me put some energy in the eye.
See you later.